Welcome back, everyone, to Your Purposeful Life, and I'm your host, Adrian Starks. Today, I would like to welcome on our special guest, Celeste Frazier, to the podcast and community. We are going to talk about spiritual growth and creativity and how it can be aligned, and I'm so excited to talk about that because, Celeste, let me tell you, I have been on quite a spiritual journey myself within the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years, so I'm eager to learn from you and what you teach in your ministry about spiritual growth. Celeste Frazier is an inspired speaker, author, teacher, and counselor. As a spiritual leader, Reverend Celeste began her religious science studies at Agape International Spiritual Center in California. She became a licensed practitioner and then went on to study at Holmes Institute, where she received a master's degree in consciousness studies. Celeste is an ordained religious science minister who has pastored 3 communities. Celeste has a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in drama from the University of Southern California. And get this, everyone. She has a background as an actress, director, and producer. Whoa, we're going to get into some of that too today. Celeste has written over a dozen scripts for the stage, television, and film. Celeste worked with her script, A Dream Deferred, garnered an award for the Black American Cinema Society. Oh my. And is available in the spiritual collections of the Los Angeles Public Library. Her poetry, short stories, and essays have been published in various publications over the years. Reverend Celeste's books, Divine Work Play and In Spirit and Love, are available on Amazon.com. Celeste has been a contributing writer to several e-zines and spiritual magazines. She regularly contributes to her podcast, Mystic Magic. Celeste, welcome to the show, my friend. Let's get into first about you as a person, Celeste, because I find you very intriguing, and that's why I have you here today. We're going to talk about spiritual growth in alignment with creativity. And I feel that right now we are in a place and time as human beings that we're changing. The energy is changing around things. And for everyone listening today, you can call it woo-woo, however you want to call it, I don't care. But we have to realize that we're more than just flesh and bone walking in these bodies. We've chose to be here on some specific reason, some purpose, and I truly believe that. And whether you have a religious background in this or in something else, I think this is a conversation that we should all have as humans today. And we have to just open our minds a little bit and learn about what Celeste is teaching and how she's helping people move more into their hearts. Now, to get to the question here first, Celeste, what is religious science?
Religious science is a philosophy of faith and a way of life. And it is part of the New Thought movement. New Thought came into fruition fully in the early 20th century. There were some earlier influences such as Phineas Quimby, such as Ralph Waldo Emerson.
I love Ralph Waldo. Yeah, I love him. He was the guy that wrote the art. Well, he is the gentleman that wrote the article Self-Reliance and Nature and all those things. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you. I had to say that. I love him.
Emma Curtis Hopkins. And Emma Curtis Hopkins was actually called the teacher of teachers, but it's a metaphysical spirituality, and metaphysical literally means beyond the physical. So we look beyond what is physical, and we use spiritual practices such as spiritual mind treatment, such as meditation, a number of different modalities, but our main practices are spiritual mind treatment, visioning, and meditation. And so it's something that Michael Beckwith introduced me to in the middle to late 1990s. Yes.
I was just going, that was one of my questions I was going to ask you. I was like, wait a minute, the Agape, I was like, that sounds familiar. It's in California, and I know Michael Beckwith was leading that. And he really inspired me, Celeste, when I found out about him about 5-6 years ago with the book The Secret, when it came out. And when he was narrating on that book, and I realized that, whoa, this gentleman here, he had the dreads. He doesn't have them anymore, but he had the dreads during that time. And he was just this wonderful person, this radiant energy. And he spoke the truth, and it was really sincere. And I was like, I really want to learn from him. So I bought his book, Life Envisioning. And I started studying that book and looking at it and the manifestation process. So that is amazing. What was he like as what is he like as a person? Have you had a chance to meet him directly, talk to him?
Oh, yeah. I've met him. I've been in class with him. We were just together in Missouri for a conference where we were both keynote speakers. Yeah, we've connected and are friends. And yeah, he's a teacher who changed my life,
I love that. We'll have to get him on the show at some point. We'll have to figure out how to make that happen so he can talk more about what he's doing these days. But back to you, this religious science, and I love your description of it, because this metaphysical aspect of life is something that I feel a lot of people are afraid of. They're afraid to talk about, or a lot of people don't want to go there. They think, oh, it's religious science, so I don't want to talk about it. And I think that it is a beautiful way of looking at life. When we look at how historically, how things happened in the past, Greeks, Romans, when things would go on, they had to have a reasoning for it. And a lot of these things were outside themselves, big things that they couldn't really explain or understand. So they started finding out ways of how to label them. And I think now to this day, we're labeling things, but we're not trying to understand them. And so we're running away from this perspective, right? We're just saying, oh, I'm this and I believe in this, but I don't really understand it. And I think with religious science, it's a way of understanding ourselves in the midst of the metaphysical and the things that are changing around us. Did you ever get any criticism about being an ordained minister in religious science? Do you ever have people that may come to you and say, hey, that religious science stuff, I don't believe in it? And
yeah, people are uninformed, as you say, and some people think it's Scientology, which it is not. And anything that is unfamiliar, people are afraid of. So, and they really don't understand how religion and science could be together, but they always have been. So, not religiosity so much as spirituality and science. So, yeah, that was one of my modules I had to complete in my consciousness study. So, yeah, science and spirituality are very much entwined.
I love that. And I love how you said too, it's not Scientology. And I think that's where a lot of people are getting the two, or trying to compare the two. We live in a world of comparisons. And I'm glad that you cleared that up. That's why I wanted to bring it up about the misunderstanding of it. Why did you become a minister, Celeste? You've done so many things as a writer, an actress, director. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. But what was the moment in time? Do you recall where you were or what happened? Or you just said, hey, I want to get into ministry?
No, not at all. I can remember as far back as 4 years old, I said I wanted to be an actress. Somewhere around maybe 9 or 10, I said ministry came across my mind, and I was like, no, because then right after that, Dr. King was killed. I was already having issues with this crucifix thing, because I was like, okay, so that's what they do to people who bring truth. And so I had just kind of put it away, and I had a film deal in Canada, in Montreal, which was about police brutality that I had written. And it was contingent on U.S. distribution. And nobody wanted to do anything about police brutality on Black people in 1997, 93 to 97, which is when I was trying to get it made. And so I just was really kind of down one day, and a friend of mine said, let's go to church. And we went to Agape, and everything shifted after that. I started taking classes, all the basic preliminary classes. Then I went to see what it meant to be a religious science practitioner, a preview of that. They said service. I'm like, cool, I can do service. I do service all the time. Then after I finished my practitioner studies, there was an open house. And I said, well, I'll just go see, what it's about. But I tell you, in the course of that, between my first and second class, I started having these experiences. One experience was when I thought I was sleeping, and I moved into this space where I felt like I was dropping deep into something. And I remember making a conscious choice to want to stay on this planet. And then when I went to class the next day, I started saying things that I didn't know I knew. In fact, I didn't know I was being used in a spirituality class to speak truth. And my mouth is moving and I'm talking and I'm like, this is really great stuff, but I don't know any of this and I don't know how I'm saying all of this. Mm-hmm. And so that would happen when my grandmother made her transition. I would do the family tributes for these kind of things because I had the entertainment background. And I was in the middle of the talk. Well, that weekend, the whole veil had lifted and I was getting all of these messages. And when I was in the service, I said the word obedient came out of my mouth, which wasn't a word I used or liked. And so I realized that because I had been directed, that I was being told that I was obedient. And, after that service, people were like, there goes the minister. And I was like, what? And then my mother told me later that night that, people asked if I was going to be a minister. And I told them no. And I said, well, let's not say no just yet, because I knew something was going on. And, I was willing to, see where it was going to take me. So, yeah, I just started taking classes. And then I was, I had a whole conversation with a friend of mine why the reasons I shouldn't do this. I got this career going over here and you could still do that. And she had an answer for everything I said. Well, we'll see what this is about. I have been a licensed minister now for 16 years.
Congratulations. Wow. Impressive.
Yeah, thanks.
I love your story and how it spiraled from wanting to create justice and the questions that came behind that. And this is what I talk about, the human mess, the things going on within that. We find some way or we create some way to have a purpose. And what you discovered through that was that your purpose was now becoming a minister. It didn't come to you right away, but it was shaping through your questioning of things and the obediency that you talked about, which I love that perspective of it. Where did you grow up, and were your parents religious at all? What was their background in religion?
Not particularly. I grew up in Chicago, a Catholic school. I went
to Catholic school.
I was sent to church, right? They did not go with me, right? There was all kind of catechism and stuff, and they would describe this God, and it wasn't the God that I knew that I had a relationship with. And so when I would question things, they would shut me down, the nuns. And so I have taken both of my parents to Agape before my father's deceased. But he was the least religious person between my parents. And when I took him to Agape, he said, it's very interesting. He was amazed that the white people and black people were in church together and that, that they were, listening to this man. And my mother, she was skeptical at first. And then she started using the principles on me to, giving back what I had taught her. And so it's like, I guess it's kind of like Jesus let Mary and Joseph know, look, this is what I do. So, you're going to have to deal with it. Right.
It reminds me of Maya Angelou's quote. She always said, when you learn, you teach. And when you teach, you learn. And your mother, what she learned from you, she taught you. And that is a great relationship to have. It reminds me of how I grew up. I grew up in a very, I wouldn't say religious background. It was more of like my family was Baptist. My mother went to church a lot. My dad wasn't so big on going to church. He believed in God and everything, but he was just like, I don't need to go to church to have someone tell me I'm. So he had this perspective, which I respected. My mother respected. Yeah. And as time went on, they moved into Catholicism. So I ended up going to a Catholic high school, and it was there where I realized, I was like, whoa, things here are very different. And I grew up in an area. Actually, I was born and raised in Texas. And so I've been up north in the Pacific Northwest for over half my life. So a lot of it was when I was very young, but I do remember when I was in high school how I did go through certain things of racism. And I couldn't understand how this would be happening in a school where they teach religion. So it really made me question things about, okay, exactly what is being missed here and why are people not seeing it? And this is not to speak ill of Catholicism in any sort or any way or any religion that you may have who are listening today. If it allows you to be a better person and you treat people with love and respect and grace, then by all means, do your thing. But if it doesn't, and you're judging and you're isolating, then you got to question yourself about what does this thing really mean to you? And that's when I began questioning myself about what I wanted to be connected to, Celeste. And that's when I decided that spiritually, I was going to be me, the soul, the entity that signed a sacred birthright to be here on this planet. I'm going to do it my way. And I remember having that conversation with my mom. I said, hey, Mom, I know you've been into this type of religion, but I'm not taking on any religions anymore. I just want to believe there's a higher power and an entity that I'm connected to and that it loves me, I love it, and that it spreads itself through me. Is that okay with you? And she was like, baby, I love you. And we taught you well. And Good. It's just a great way to look at things. Did you ever...
I'm very proud to say that my father told me that I was his minister while he was still alive. Oh. And I have been my mother's minister as well. She was with me at the church I started in Chicago. So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah. You say you can just touch people's lives when you have something that you feel passionate about and you're purposeful towards it, and it connects and helps people to just really see themselves. And that's what it's all about. I truly believe that. Did you ever have any challenges shaping that part of you energetically, that purpose, and with your soul, with this new journey you're on? Did you ever question yourself? Did you ever just say, maybe this is not for me, or can I really do this?
Well, there's always challenges, regardless of what the work is that you do.
That's true.
What I did when I looked at, what I did, and I still do, entertainment stuff from time to time, not as dedicated fully as I was. But just got a check a couple weeks ago. I just knew about me. I'm like, well, what are you doing? Because you do this, you do that. And I said, okay, your through line is stimulating minds and engaging hearts. That's what you do. It doesn't have to have one form. It can have a number of forms. And that's so right. When I realized that, then I was like, well, okay, so I've got a breadth of ways that I can express, because this is, I'm inspired, and therefore I want to share what I have got.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And like you were saying, you didn't limit yourself. You said, what do I have that I can share? It reminds me of the parable of the talents in the Bible. And people know of this story. I'm not going to share it here, but if you don't, go and read it. You'll find out what I'm talking about. But the sharing of what we have is so important, because it's a give and receive system here on this planet. And that's what it's all about. Why do you...
And another great book by that name, by a Black female author. You familiar with that?
No. What is that?
Oh, you look that up. It's called The Parable of the Sower.
Ooh, yes. Okay. I will look that up. I'm always about learning new things, so I definitely will look that up, and I'll put it in the show notes too. Why do you think it's hard for people, Celeste, to connect on a spiritual level with themselves and the planet in this day and time?
I think because of conditioning, whether you were brought up Catholic or however, there are some aspects of religiosity that have been very confining. We were, for example, in Catholic schools, and they used to crack our knuckles or hit us with paddles when, if one person did something, everybody in the classroom got it, right? And so, there were ways that they described God to us that were a turnoff and very restricting. And so a lot of people who come into New Thought Metaphysics and spirituality generally are afraid to come in because of their religious background and the kind of abuse that they received and the kind of restrictions that they felt, and felt more comfortable having a personal relationship with God. And, coming to us, and they realized that they could do that and be in spiritual community as well, and even develop that even deeper. So those who have not been exposed to it are hesitant. They'll put everything under an umbrella of organized religion and say, I'm not going to do organized religion. I'll do spirituality. But you don't have to do it alone, and you can have people who can support you in that process.
I love that. And this idea too of being punished for believing in something is something that I feel has happened to a lot of people condition wise. This being that could punish you for being this way or saying this, when reality is the being is supposed to be loving and caring and gracious. And this idea of people talking about religion, or maybe even changing religions, it doesn't seem like it's safe for them. And this space that you're talking about, it's safe. It's okay to question. It's okay to have a curiosity about this thing outside of yourself, because that's who we are spiritually as people. We're just expansive beings. What would happen, Celeste, if people were to begin to connect themselves more spiritually?
Wow.
Would this help them create better things in their lives, help them be more creative, more responsive to opportunities? What is it for a person listening today if they decided, hey, I want to try getting more into my spiritual aspect of myself? What would this do for me?
Well, the greatest thing is peace.
Okay.
And when you start to understand spiritual principles, and when you allow yourself to be influenced by spiritual texts, then you start to function on another dimension, which is not simply at face value. Then you come to understand how you can forgive, which also brings you peace, how you can release the history, the trauma, and you get to be in community, you get to study with other people, you get to build connections that are not based on necessarily an outer activity, but one that is common to all life. And I can take it beyond humans. I mean, we do animal blessings and all of this. There's nothing outside of spirit. And so really coming into an awareness, you can tap into many things. You can tap into your ancestors. You can tap into what it is that brings you enthusiasm. You can tap into allowing yourself to go beyond the limitations that you've placed on yourself. It's freeing. And it increases your capacity to love. It just makes you a happier person,
A happier person. I love that. And that's what it's about, having peace and being a person of happiness. It's so important about this question because we're living in this time, Celeste, where everyone is rushing to try to appease other people. They're trying to be accepted. They're trying to be loved. They're trying to be popular. They're trying to be the most important, when in reality is the alignment of ourselves, being true to who we are as beings and loving ourselves. That's what creates the power. I call it the self-power, self-actualization.
Yeah.
And I love what you're teaching here. So this is important for all of us to know.
The more you're loving yourself, the less there's a need for other people's validation.
Oh, say it now. Say it again. Preach.
The more you love yourself, the less there's a need for outside validation.
Where were you at in my life when I needed you about 10, 15 years ago, Celeste? If I could tell you how many times I jumped in and out of relationships to get self-validation, oh my, I was a train wreck. But now this new journey in my life is just things I love about myself. It's so funny. The other day I was just sitting down by myself and I was reading a book and had a latte in my hand. And I was just all of a sudden this thought came, I just love my life. I love myself. And it was just this feeling that came. And it was so odd because there really wasn't this big event that happened. It was just a moment of bliss that you're talking about, this peace that you just mentioned. It was this serenity that just went, man, I love you. And that voice inside, you don't hear it unless you're really connected with yourself. And this is not to say that I'm not connected to other people or that I don't like, I love people, but I also love myself now. And I don't mind being alone. Now, for some people, this journey is hard. And I want to talk about your article, The Spiritual Magnificence, Journey of the Soul, that you wrote. And for me, it sparked a lot of curiosity because when I think about this article, I think about Howard Thurman. He was the mentor to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he talked about the longest and hardest journey ever is the journey inward. Yeah. And immediately I was like, okay, we need to talk about this, Celeste. So this journey of the soul, what sparked this article for you?
I believe I wrote that article when I was ministering in Oakland, California. I imagine at that point I was thinking about what there is to explore and to discover. The soul is the place where the divine energy comes into beings, and it's also the place from which we create. It creates operas and
That's
choreography and films and all kinds of wonderful things. Art.
Isn't creativity like love? Like love, like creativity comes from love.
All of those are qualities of the divine. So God is love, God is creativity, God is peace, so just know that the creative process is spirit, soul, body, right? So it comes into form as body, whether it's a person or a piece of artwork or whatever it is. But the process involves accepting. And so the journey of the soul is accepting and also being empowered to create from that divine inspiration. And so people may not acknowledge that their creativity comes from the divine. I was writing for years before I realized that I wasn't doing it. I was writing for decades before I realized I wasn't doing it, right? And so now that I know that I am an expression of the divine, then I get to visit that and listen to find out something that's greater than my surface mind would ever be able to discover on my own. And so when I started realizing the source of my substance, then I knew that there was no limit to what I could express.
Beautiful. This source that comes from within, from the divine, it reminds me, I was doing some research and reading about Beethoven, the classical genius, and how he was actually deaf, but he created these masterpieces. And you're thinking to yourself, like, how can someone who can't hear create such an impact on music that still impacts us this very day? And it's associated with linking brain neurons together and helping you to focus and to have better memory, this classical music and the way that he created it. But here's a gentleman that he would go out into his orchard in the morning and he would hug a tree. And that, I believe, truthfully, is he was onto something. He was like, there's a source that's all around me. I'm hugging this tree. And they said that he would go out and hug it every morning. And then he would go on a little walk and then come back in and he would start composing. And that is something that doesn't get talked about a lot. People talk about how he was powerful and how he did all these things, but he was pulling from something, like you were saying, that was internal, something that was the source.
Yeah. And, people think this is blasphemous to say, but you are it. I am it. we are an expression of it.
I believe
And
that
so
too.
he might have gone to hug the tree to ground himself, because you can be, spiritually enlightened, but not necessarily be of any earthly good. And so when you
Ooh.
connect with nature, sometimes that can also ground you so that you can be of earthly good. And
See, I never heard that before. That's good.
yeah, we get information from everything, from trees, from flowers, from, all of nature, because we're all expressions of the divine. And so when we realize that there's more than one of us, the physical one is also the one that you can see in the mirror that doesn't have pain or sorrow or fear or doubt. It just is. And that's the other dimension that is who we are. We're spiritual beings. The experiences of human, but we're spiritual beings.
Just impressive. And this is why I wanted you on the show, because of this very reason of your expertise and just the radiancy. For our audience today, I'm just in awe right now. Honestly, there's a lot I'm learning. There's a lot I'm understanding. And the being spiritually enlightened, but not grounded. Now, that was a learning moment for me. Very powerful, because I never thought of that, of not being of any earthly good because we're too far out there. And that is important for us to know, because there's some of us, and I've been this way before, where you get so spiritually inclined that you're like, well, nothing moves me, nothing hurts me, I have no emotions toward this, I'm just this, I'm this way. And it's like, no, you're on planet Earth. Bring it down a notch. Let gravity pull you down here. Put your feet down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you have to feel the vibrations of what's happening on this planet through the process of growth and change. Right. And that's what I find absolutely fantastic. How do you help people, Celeste, move into their hearts? Because we talked about this spiritual ascension of being connected to the source. But in your work, there's a lot of people who have forgotten how to feel and listen to their heart. And they're operating from the head only. How do you help them move back into that source?
It's basically having a conversation. I will hear the problems and I will hear the issues when I'm counseling. I will give people back to themselves by asking questions so that I can determine what their belief system is. We're all run by our belief systems. We can believe that, men are bad. We can believe that, whatever. So once I know what their belief system is, I can start questioning them so that they will reconsider if that is a belief system that they want to keep. And it usually is an emotional process because it is very personal. It's very, very much guarded by a lot of people. However, if you come to me, then that means you want some light, you want some guidance. And, in our conversation, there could be tears, there could be, breakthroughs, there could be resistance, right? There could be different things, but I'm always offering them self-love as a tool for strengthening their lives and embracing their lives. Yeah.
I love that. Strengthening and embracing their lives and using this as tools. And like you said, it just starts with a conversation of finding out what it is, what's their dialogue, what's that story going on in their head,
right.
Because we all have these stories. And I had to change my story many times. I had to really look at my history, my family's history, and not to blame anyone or shame anyone. It wasn't anything like that. I just needed to understand why I chose this environment and what this environment has molded in me so far and what I needed to reshape, with my own purpose and my own ideology. And so that's great. We're going to change.
There's cause and effect, that's what we study as metaphysicians. And we can change the effect when we change the cause, and so
Absolutely.
just knowing that we don't have to be attached to generational trauma. We don't have to be attached to, religious trauma. We don't have to be attached to political trauma, right? We can choose again to see it in a different framework that'll bring us closer to our peace and our joy.
I love how you said the political trauma. Mm-hmm. And, it's interesting because the young generation, it's real. The young generation is very interesting because they have this terminology. It may be changing now, but I had a couple of young ones. They said, hey, I'm woke. I know what's going on. I said, yeah, but you're woke, but are you spiritually, are you enlightened? Do you understand what's going on, but you're not getting wrapped up in the drama of the mess of it? Do you understand what's going on, but you're finding a way in your essence to become better so that you don't have to experience that, or you can help others see how they can become better through the situation? We all go through it. And I find that with the young generation, they're so wrapped up in the problem that they're not understanding how to create or be a part of a solution. And I understand there's some things out there that we just can't, we have to rally. I get it. We got to get together. We got to talk. We got to put some visuals on this. But a lot of times there's a lot of anger going on with the younger communities, a lot of mishaps, a lot of misunderstandings, not being willing to communicate. Just automatically you go into primordial state, primitive, just get mad and angry and want to fight. It's what happened to words? What happened to using words to express ourselves and our emotions? You're just going to get mad right away. And I think that's missing with our communities.
It's not that we're denying our anger. I mean, Jesus had a fit in the temple because they were defiling the temple.
He flipped the table over.
Yeah, I mean, it's yes, because, I don't think God gets angry, but they used to teach us that God gets angry. But the point is, more important than the anger is your healing, because at the root of the anger is pain, is hurt. And so, because I facilitate conversations around race, and I facilitate conversations that include a lot of social issues, I have turned the conversation into one of healing so that we can release the pain, and then we're able to see things a little clearer.
I like that. Releasing the pain so we can see things clearer. And that's what's important, is releasing the pain and identifying that there is pain. And speaking of pain, let's move into a little bit of ease here, a little bit more of a pleasure. And let's change the conversation a little bit. And let's talk about something here that I've been waiting to. So you're an actress, writer, and director. My question for you, because you've done so many things and you've taught us so much about the healing perspectives, what kinds of things have we seen you in as an actress?
Oh, well, if you blink, you probably would miss me. I might be the person in the background. I might be, the nurse in the operating room or the anesthesiologist. I might be, the woman in the office building.
Give us some names. Or do you have any names of any shows or any movies that at least we can go and see, pause it at the 30-second mark, oh yeah, there's Celeste. We got it.
Oh, there was a TV show, it was a doctor show called Partners.
Okay.
There was it was a Martin Lawrence movie. I'm trying to remember the name of it. I have to look at my resume to see. But
it wasn't A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, was it?
Yes.
Was it that one? It was that one? Okay. All right. Yes. All right. I'm gonna go back and watch that one.
Don't blink because you miss me. Yeah. Okay. And so movie. Just like I did a Toyota commercial last month, it's just it's nothing extraordinary. I go back. My first thing I did in television was Different Strokes. That's how far back it goes.
Okay. I remember that show.
Most of those people are dead. Yeah. Except for Todd Bridges. Most of those people are gone.
That show goes way back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the early 80s or something.
Yeah. Well, see, this is part of the expression you were talking about earlier. That's why I wanted to bring this up, because we always talk about what we're really good at. and what we do for other people, but we also have our lives. We have this part of ourselves that is still evolving and unfolding, and as you would say, creating things out there. And I love the fact that you're in this realm, you're a minister, you're teaching spirituality at a science level and metaphysical level, and more importantly, a self-love acceptance level. But you're also able to go out here and write plays, write books, act, and do these things because that is the expression of who you are choosing to be. And I have this thing I love to say is that we've all signed a universal contract to be here on planet Earth. And the thing is that it's none of my spiritual business what someone else's universal contract is, but it's my spiritual business to focus on what my contract is. And if I don't know it, why did I forget it? And how can I get it back? How can I remember it? And this expression of us is ways of us adhering to that contract. I showed up here to do these things. And where do you think we are headed right now, Celeste? Speaking of that, as human beings, this next pattern, what I call human evolution, where are we headed on this ever-changing and evolving planet? Where are we going consciously? And is it something we should be worried about? Or is it something that we could be like, okay, it's getting better?
I think that as you use the word evolution, that's the most appropriate word. We're moving towards light. And, we were light, right? Just like from the beginning, right? And we don't necessarily have to have form in order to be light. If you think about where we've been, England just got their first non-white prime minister.
That's right.
The boundaries are fading. The separation is fading. There's a fight against that, which is why we have interesting leadership things happening and anarchy happening, because people want to hold on to the way things were because they're afraid of becoming extinct. And it's part of our evolution to erase the lines, right? The demarcations. There was nothing in any spiritual text that talks about borders or boundaries in terms of where people live, right? And we've gone beyond this planet. I'm not saying that we have to be, interstellar beings necessarily, but light can travel anywhere. And so when we are not encumbered by the pain and separation, there is no limit to what form we can take if we choose to take a form, if that's even necessary. And so when you ask me, where are we going? I don't know how far out you wanted me to go, but to me, that's what it is. We're moving into oneness.
I love that answer. You're moving into oneness because that's what I wanted to know. And as far as the future is concerned, you can never really tell what's going to happen, but just from in the present moment, we see things that are happening. We see what's going on social media, and social media has its place for me. It's kind of a love and a kind of annoying relationship. I don't like to say the word hate. So I love it, but then sometimes I'm annoyed by it because it gives us all this negativity right away. Like if you just pop on social media or TV, the first thing you see is something negative. And I'm like, out of all the things going on this planet, you're telling me about this that's happening right now as the frontliner? What can I do about that? What am I going to do about it? I can't resolve that. You're just making me scared. And then I'm spreading out that energy. So I choose not to get involved in watching too much of that. But I understand to be informed. But I don't want to be too informed or informed in a way that causes me to think differently about my light and my energy that you were talking about, Celeste.
Well, this is why spiritual practice is crucial. Take, for example, Kyle Rittenhouse. And I talk about this in a panel that I did with the creators of Course in Miracles, the Foundation for Inner Peace that's showing tomorrow. When I made all these judgments about him and his mother and how he can cross state lines and kill people and all of this, and how irresponsible a mother she was and all of this. And then I went into teaching the course. I had judgment around the judge and all of this stuff. And, and all of that is still true at the level of facts. But where do I get to see, where am I irresponsible? Where am I reckless? Because that's the real conversation. It was never about them, as Mother Teresa would say. It was never about them anyway. It was about my relationship with my spirit. And so when you can use it as when you feel yourself flaring up or getting disgusted or aggravated or whatever, turn it away from the person that it's directed to and back to yourself. And so what is my work? Where do I need to grow from here? And when you can use social media and not be dictated by it, then you maintain your power and you can grow from it and not in spite of it.
Beautifully said. That was a teaching moment. So I am going to go back and listen to this. Yep. I'm go back and listen to this and even write some notes down and carry with me my little notebook, because I love learning these new ideas from leaders like yourself, because it's important that we learn all from each other. And this is a powerful tool that you just given us on how to deal with social media, because social media is not going anywhere. It's going to be a major tool from this day forward. And I think it's something that we have to learn how to work with. So where can our listeners learn more about you and these wonderful miracles that you're creating in people's lives and helping them move to the centering of their heart?
My website is celestefrazier.com.
Okay.
My books are on Amazon and Kindle. I'm on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm sharing my podcast on all the major podcast venues, from Apple to Spotify to Google, pretty much all of the major ones.
Can you share the name of your podcast with our audience?
My podcast is Mystic Magic.
What a name, Mystic Magic.
Yeah.
Love that.
Well, it's my focus is around discovering where the magic is in your life when you've had a mystical moment that changed the course of your life.
Okay.
Because there is going to be something that has redirected or inspired or led us into a new direction. And that's a fascinating thing, to be able to see how common it is so that other people can know it can happen for them too.
You heard it. Go ahead and download that podcast today, not tomorrow, today. And one last question for you. What does living a purposeful life look like to you?
Service. When I am serving others, I'm always serving myself. Being on purpose for me is being divinely guided, not by the outer effects, but by that which is within me that seeks something more. If I'm not seeing it outside of myself, then I need to look within myself to find it and share it. And that, in whatever form it takes, is me living in my purpose and living a purposeful life.
Well said. Celeste, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show today. It was a wonderful time spent between two souls and the souls and spirits of our listeners. Thank you so much. We've learned a lot today, Celeste.
Thank you.